everyone.
Welcome to the Ellen is Diseased as Hell show tonight. We're glad to be with you.
Oh, come on.
Talk for
Not
us,
that.
Ellen.
Do I have to?
Speak to us, Ellen.
Stop it. That's not very nice.
Ellen's
It comes and
doing her
goes.
Alvin imitation tonight.
No, I'm doing mine. I might be sick. Imitation. Hopefully not. I did spend the greater portion of yesterday morning and afternoon, or early afternoon, at the University of South Carolina because Charlie Kirk was there. And of course, I'm a fan. So I traveled down to the university and was around, I don't know, about 1,000 people this far from each other. I couldn't even get my water bottle out of my purse without hitting somebody. But I did, even though I was later than I expected to be. He started at noon, and I got there around 11:30, 11:45, and kind of pushed my way all the way to the front. Um, I had on my signed Charlie Kirk hat, MAGA hat. So
Did you wear it?
apparently yeah, I had to take it off when it started pouring down rain, because I didn't want the signature to get smeared or disappear or whatever. I know he did it with a Sharpie, but still, um, it was they did have to cut it short because of the threat of lightning, and they wanted everybody safe, especially Charlie, of course, and the equipment and all that stuff. So yeah, he was there. He threw out lots of hats and a few interesting or questions that were very wordy and arguments that were without a whole lot of substance. Let's put it that way. But Charlie did what Charlie does.
And I mean, that's kind of what students do best, isn't it?
It is, and it was ironic because one guy was talking about immigration and how it was what happened. What about the First and Fifth Amendment rights for these illegal immigrants? Huh? They're felons. They broke the law. They're not Americans, and they don't have constitutional rights anymore. So they never did. So that's a thing. But Charlie Kirk was like, I'm sorry, but last night, wasn't there a student killed by an illegal immigrant? Yes, shot of USC. He was like, well, that's tragedy, but it's like, no, there's no buts. That's not how this works. But these MS-13 gangs, what happens to their Fifth Amendment right? They don't get a Fifth Amendment right. That is not how immigration works. That is not how the system works. So it was interesting.
Yeah, they're given a permit to enter, which is based on their lawful obedience
Right.
and fulfillment of the terms of their visa. And these are illegals. They haven't even been granted a visa.
They broke the
they
law to get into the country.
They have no right to be here.
Nope. And they have no constitutional rights.
So,
yes, it was interesting.
Oh, my wrist is itching. Sorry about that.
Scratch away. And if I have to pause or go off to sneeze, I do apologize, but I was literally soaking wet. One of Charlie's bodyguards handed me a poncho, this plastic thing they had in these little packets that they were giving out. And I was like, you don't understand. It's like 90 degrees surrounded by these people behind me. I was like, I'm good. And he looked at me like I was nuts. And I was like, it's hot. He was like, okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Did you have fun overall?
Yeah, it was a good experience to kind of get to see how it happens in real life and not just the videos.
Yeah. Was it that much different?
No, actually. I'm interested to see the videos that come out from that. campus visit, though. I should be in at least one of them. I was right there up front. I was 3 people down from the speaker. So,
Well, I saw a video and looked for you, and I was like, I even tagged you in it. I don't know if you've been on or not, but
uh-uh.
where are you? So
Was it at USC?
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Where was it? Instagram?
I think so. Yeah.
You should play it and I'll show you where I was.
Well, I didn't download it and save it. I'm
Oh,
not sure where
okay.
it is now, but maybe we'll do that Saturday
Well,
once you
also,
find some.
after I took off my MAGA Charlie Kirk signed hat, which I usually have right there, but I left it in the other room to dry. Um, I did put on my Moffat on Money hat. Just FYI.
And for those of you out, members of the family, do you realize I don't have a hat?
That's
They
probably my
apparently
fault.
all got carted off.
I maybe have 2 or 3. I need to send you one of my extras.
Well, I need to order some more.
I need to get the store up. I know.
Yeah.
I suck.
Chop, chop.
I know. Chop, chop. Maybe while I'm cuddled up, because I'm not going to be able to do much. If I still feel like this tomorrow, the next day, I would just get my laptop out and get going.
Well, thanks for the update.
Yeah,
And
man, it was cool.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tuesday night cuddle session for all the members of the
Yes.
family. And look at this road trip for Melissa to Pennsylvania.
I hope you go see Jane.
Jen's like, hopefully it'll warm up. It's freezing here today, that damn groundhog.
It was warm here today.
It was a little cool here today, but we're getting the cold front that you got, previously or whatever, I guess. So
Yesterday,
on
yeah.
the tail end of it.
And GB's going too. Yay.
Driving or flying, Melissa? I presume flying.
I would assume so, but
I've been
will tell
thinking of
us.
taking a road trip this summer out west, so I may do that. May get a little ambitious. It was below freezing this morning. Oh, hell no.
I think it was
It's
60
spring.
here this morning.
Yeah, I'm looking at the weather now, trying to see what the current temp is, because I am mildly curious.
Flying.
Yeah, it's 60 here now.
Let me look, see what
I
it
haven't
is
checked
here.
the weather. Going down to high tomorrow is 61, so it'll be a little cooler tomorrow.
Yikes.
But
okay,
we got
it's 65 here. And the high was 70 today, but it'll be 68 is the high tomorrow. It's getting to 46 tonight.
That's a little nippy.
It's a little nippy.
All right. And Melissa's flying. Much, better.
We'll let y'all have that conversation. Yeah. That's a long way to drive.
It is, but there's just a lot of places I want to see in between.
Yeah.
So, and I'd love to drive through and in and around Montana. I love the state of Montana for 2 months out of the year. Don't know if I could do it the other 10 months.
You couldn't. I promise you could not do it. I know you too well.
Yeah, I spent a winter up in Chicago and it drove me nuts. And that's a little different. Anyway. Interesting day today. Welcome to Tuesday night Q&A. This is kind of a night for y'all to ask questions. We have received a couple actually, and via email. But if you have some other questions, comments, or whatever, just throw them up. A-Train is monitoring all the stuff.
I am.
So if it doesn't show up in the feed, she will relay it.
Let
but
me
feel free.
test. I'm always testing X to see if I have to watch that too much.
Yeah,
Nope. Okay, we're
there it
good
is.
with them again. So Rumble, I am definitely watching you.
Yeah, Rumble won't feed through to our host service, which is StreamYard. So we have to relay from there, but usually X and YouTube almost always will relay. So
X is it did and then it didn't and now it is again, which is nice.
good to have an X back.
But when StreamYard asked for me to take a survey about what I would like to see back, I was like, can we at least get the texts from or the messages from X back? That would be nice.
Good to see him back. A lot going on. Some interesting days in the market. Past few days. Today was another one. Obviously, it's kind of bouncy today. I actually started a class with the Dow up. One of the rooms I teach in has a live ticker and big board of stocks. And so I go in and I was looking, Dow was up just right at 1,000 points. An hour later, when the class was nearing an end, I turned and looked, it was up only 80. The S&P 500 erased a 4.5% gain in a couple of hours, which is pretty damn rapid. So that
Bitcoin
just
was up.
shows you. Do what?
Bitcoin was up this afternoon.
Yep, it ended up down a little bit today. But it just shows you the insanity of the market. Up 1,000 points 1 hour, down 400 a couple hours later. It's that kind of market. And the run, actually, the positive, run started last night when there were rumors of a 90-day delay in the implementation of the
The tumors.
tariffs.
Tumors. Is that like some psychiatrist? Oh, are you? I'm sorry, y'all. I do not feel good. Are you saying that tariffs are like tumors?
No, I'm actually just kind of a rhyming fool. Rumors, tumors, it just seemed to go. Anyway. And we can thank CNBC for that,
Oh,
who
nice.
kicked off the rumor, but it spread. And the markets were up, fairly strongly until the White House said it was unaware of any pause, and the gains just vaporized quickly. So today was also the 8th of April, which has some
Tomorrow.
significance in that it was the drop dead date Trump had set for China to rescind its retaliatory tariffs. Well, they didn't. So he piled on another
50%
50%.
on top.
50% this afternoon.
And
China
that goes,
vowed
go ahead.
to defend its rights. Do what?
And those all go into effect at 12:01 a.m. this evening or tomorrow morning, however you look at it.
Yep. Trump was true to his word. He said he'd do it. He did it. And, it kind of struck me when China said it, it vowed to defend its rights. What, what right are they defending? The right to screw U.S. manufacturers?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But obviously the markets didn't end the day very happy. I saw some.
Jane.
Jane, I can't wait to see the prices at Dollar Tree after that.
Yep.
Dollar Tree hadn't had prices at $1 in I don't know how long. It's way past time for them to change their name.
That is true.
I mean, and it wasn't so long ago. I remember you go in there, everything was $1 or under $1. 2 for $1, 3 for $1.
the dollar store. I mean, that was kind of the whole
Yes.
principle of it.
Yeah, and Dollar General, and
Mm-mm.
there's another one. I forget the name of it, but you get the idea. Yeah. That is that disappeared a couple of years ago. In terms of the movement today, some pundits refer to it as a bull trap, because there are
What
times
is
when the market has a prolonged drop over months or years, but even at that time when it's dropping, it will have days or even maybe a week where it rises a little bit and then drops again. Those are called bull traps, because when the
gotcha?
market starts going up, people think, it's over, let me jump in quickly, but it ends up just being a trap. I call it a dead cat bounce, because y'all remember as a kid, you'd come across the cat that had died, been out in the sun a couple days, it was a little bit swollen, and you could pick it up and bounce it, watch it
No,
bounce.
no.
You don't remember that?
I never would pick up a dead cat and try to bounce it.
Well, when you saw one that was like big and fat and swollen,
No, no, never crossed my mind.
well, anyway, Ellen led kind of a
Anybody,
sheltered
anybody
childhood,
else?
so
Anybody else experience this dead cat bounce? I'm curious.
yeah, you could do it with most any dead bloated animal that had been you know pumped up a little bit.
Armadillo.
Oh, did I ever tell you when I was
Okay, see,
work?
see.
What kind of childhood did you have, Clay?
Apparently, a sick
Just
and
a
twisted one.
just just a normal one. Just running around, the neighborhood,
Apparently
parks.
not.
See a dead cat, you shoot the hoop.
No, no one does that. That is just you. Sorry.
Um, what was I going to say? I forgot.
Dead cats bouncing is all I can think of.
I mean, we like blowing stuff up too.
Okay.
That was something else.
Yeah, you were saying something else about your childhood.
Yeah, I don't
I can't.
remember.
I can't remember. I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
yeah,
No, that's all right.
no one agrees with that. Uh,
Yeah, but it's all girls. Y'all don't have fun
we had plenty of fun.
growing up.
My only friends in my neighborhood were 7 boys. We never picked up dead cats or dead animals.
All right.
So I
Fair enough.
sorry.
But anyway, dead cat bounce is, kind of a little rise before market starts dropping again. And how do you know it's real or it's a bull trap or dead cat bounce, whatever you want to call it? Um,
Jane, farm girl, and we still didn't pick up dead animals unless we had to,
yeah, that's because you'd usually call for, a dude to come pick it up and go bury it or get it out of the way or something,
or bounce it. Apparently, they'd
or
called you.
bounce it. Yeah. Of course, they don't bounce as well in the grass or a field. You need some good pavement.
Say roadkill is what you're talking about specifically,
Well, roadkill usually gets torn up and the hide has a cut or something in it, so the gases escape. They don't blow up as well. So you
so
need the skin intact.
where did you find these animals that you would take all the way to concrete or asphalt to bounce?
You just a neighborhood cat would end up dying or something.
God. Okay.
We had Great Danes that would take care of that for us. So I'm just like a big puppy, a big
Okay.
Great Dane.
Whatever you say.
Um, Did I ever tell you about when I was working with the organ bank and went to the morgue to
The
see what
organ
all they
bank?
had? Huh?
The organ bank?
Yeah,
Okay, it sounds like you said organ. That's just me.
I did. Organ bank.
Uh,
You collect people's organs.
no, like Oregon.
No, organ.
Okay. That's exactly how it started with Jeffrey Dahmer. Just saying.
Where's that block button?
She's got a point. I'm just saying. I'm with you, Melissa. It don't sound right.
Anyway, sometimes I'd go by the morgue and there'd be John or Jane Doe's. And, I might try to collect, like, some of the eyes or heart or whatever so that med students could have organs to practice on to try to, develop their skills. Because let's face it, the only way you learn to operate on an eye is to actually be able to practice on an eye. There was nothing synthetic at that time that could really match it or come close.
Uh-huh.
Um, and sometimes you could use, animals, but a lot of times their texture and depth and structure would be somewhat different. So anyway, I was at the morgue and they brought in a floater.
Oh
A
no. Did
dude
you bounce it?
a dude that had been in the river for 4 or 5 days. But they brought him in a pickup truck and he filled the back of that pickup truck. They just had him covered with a huge tarp. And so they backed up to the morgue, pulled the tarp off, and there was this massively, massively swollen dude that had drowned. And there was a intern at the morgue. And so the ME grabbed a scalpel and handed it to him because the dude would not fit through the doors.
Oh my god. Oh, but it smelled
Handed
so good.
handed a scalpel to the intern and told him, "Go release the pressure." And as the intern took the scalpel and started heading toward the truck, I noticed everybody there started backing up. And so, being the guy that I was, I thought, I'll back up. And so I actually got behind some people. And the intern had no idea. And so he just went up there and bam,
No.
the whole thing ruptured and you had slime and gloop all flying through the air. He got slimed. Did you ever watch Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
He got slimed.
That
Uh,
moron. Nobody did he not know what happens, like why he was bloated? There was so much gas in there that it has to be released.
I have a saying called
Stupid should
"Stupid
hurt.
should hurt." So
Melissa.
anyway, I did take organs from our local butchers into a school for science class show and tell. That's it. I mean, there's nothing, wrong with that. That helps education. That helps people learn, understand.
Okay, what does bouncing dead cats have to do with education?
Well, it teaches you about laws of physics,
Okay.
resistance, pressure, movement, momentum, mass, acceleration.
All right. Okay. I feel you.
And I kind of think that in schools they ought to have basic first aid or medical classes and
We did.
you know have the kids practice doing some basic stitching on
That would be helpful.
animals or um, taking some legs of animals and breaking the bone and having them learn how to splint it. Just some basic first aid and trauma things. Anyway,
It was mandatory that we in PE that we all become CPR certified
I
in my
think
high
that's a
school.
good thing. Yeah. I
So
just I, I just wish they would bring back more of these practical classes in schools because damn, kids aren't learning how to read, write, and arithmetic. They might as well learn how to put on a Band-Aid.
true.
So, and some of that makes it, a little bit more interesting. When I was, let's see, Jane, when I was growing up, you had to take basic first aid as part of health class. Yeah, I don't know why they ever did away with it because a lot of people now have no freaking idea what to do if somebody else is hurt or injured.
I don't even know how to unwrap a Band-Aid. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, dead cat bounces. We'll probably see some more. Oh, I was going to say, how do you know if it's real or just a dead cat bounce? Obviously, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But I
I still
talk
needed
about
that sneeze. Sorry.
it's okay. Hope it felt good.
I didn't get to do it. I wish I had.
Um,
Hunter safety, really. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. And now, if somebody suggested that, people would just throw a conniption fit and fall in it. Uh, Anyway, topic for a different night. Um,
Now, Rip Clay, you're going to ask me on Friday what you discussed or wanted to talk about on a different night. Write that down, please.
what the topic I sent to you?
Well, that would end this one. You said topic for a different night.
Oh.
So whatever you were thinking of, write it down. Because I'm not going to remember every comment.
Well, I do generally try to keep the topics somewhere related to finance or government taxation, budgeting, efficiency, that kind of thing. A few homesteading things, but hell, we may branch out, just get even more irritating.
Oh, there you go.
All right, real thing. How do you know? I've often said that, I love finance because it's a combination of art and science. We've got all the maths, a lot of calculations, a lot of data. But if it was just formulas and calculations and data, computers, there'd be no need for individuals. You just turn on a computer and let it do its thing. And there are a lot of computer trading programs, but they work within generally pretty narrow confines. The so what a couple things that I really look at. One is the momentum. Is the market crashing hard? Because normally it'll crash hard and then it'll kind of weaken and slow down and chop a little bit. People are getting near what's called capitulation, where they're just like giving up. Everybody's already sold most of what they're going to sell. See, there's a lot of institutions that can't sell, that have to keep 95% invested in all stocks. And particularly as the market grows increasingly institutional in its nature, that's a big chunk of the equities being held. So they're not going to sell. They can't sell, even if they wanted to. So you look at individuals, hedge funds, leverage funds, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight. Leverage funds are funds that borrow money, add it to your investment, and use that to buy stocks. So it's like taking out loans to buy stocks. It's it can increase your return, but it can also greatly increase your loss. So you look at these kind of, investors and managers and kind of see where they are and what their thoughts are. And once they, kind of get to a point of resignation or capitulation, that's probably one pretty decent sign that the market's near a bottom. It's not perfect, but it's information. Secondly, just looking at, historical averages, a 10% correction is normal. Happens every year, every couple of years. A 20% drop is rare. It happens every 5, 6, 7 years. A 30% drop every 20, 30 years. So if you see a 20% drop, which we're 20% down in NASDAQ, you're sitting there thinking, this is a pretty significant move. 30% drop. This is huge. Those normally are good buying opportunities. Something else you want to look at is, like I've talked repeatedly, how this market has been grotesquely overvalued. If you look at the Buffett index, it's been at an all-time high. Buffett index is just taking the value of the Wilshire 5000, pretty broad stock index, Wilshire 5000, and dividing it by GDP. And that ratio has a mean of let's say 100 normalized, but the normalized mean is 100. Well, when it gets up to 150, Buffett considers stocks to be significantly overvalued. Well, a couple months ago, it hit 200. Now it's down to, I don't know, 185, 180. It's still significant. The market is still significantly overvalued. So you're looking at this kind of information, this kind of data, and you realize even though the market is overvalued, doesn't mean it can't get more overvalued. So what do you do if the market still seems overvalued, but you sense capitulation? Well, you look, where else in the world is money going? Do you want to invest in China right now? Do you want to invest in Europe, in Africa? How about the Middle East? How about Russia? How about South America? You just go through all the different regions and it's like, there's really nowhere else to invest. So maybe buying an overvalued US stock, particularly when you think the whole world's still going to be throwing money in here, is maybe a better deal than other places. Not that there won't be better opportunities out there, but for the average investor, being able to find them, track them, manage them, know when to sell them, that's pretty difficult. So, maybe I need to adjust and get used to the U.S. stock market being overvalued. We kind of win by default in terms of places to invest in the world, particularly if we get our act together.
I think we've thought it's been overvalued for a long time. I remember when it was 12, 10, 9 back in 08, 09. And it was artificially inflated. Because we during COVID.
Yep.
Sorry, I missed a little bit of what you said because I had to go blow my nose.
That's okay. You've still got that special I am leper tone.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, like I say, it's not a specific science. There's nothing specifically I can tell you. I mean, when I start putting money back in the market, I'll tell you that's not investment advice, but I've, tried to be reasonably open with my general thoughts on the market and what I'm doing for whatever good that does.
Jane,
so some interesting days in the
hang on
after hours. Yeah.
We got a little pause. So, Jade.
Speaking of homesteading, I was working on my next project today and it came out really well. What was that? What project was that? Do share, do tell.
Do tell.
Yeah, Jane
It was
has helped host some shows where we have talked about homesteading and some specific products or projects like solar cooking, etc. And E-Train has actually acquired a couple of solar cookers.
I do have them, yes.
So, but yeah, homesteading is something that we have fun with. It's just part of that encouragement for people to be able to, take care of themselves should they need to.
Yes.
While we're looking or, trying to figure out next homesteading projects there, just a brief update on the after hours markets. They're still dropping as of 30 minutes ago, down a little bit over 1%. The S&P was down about 1.7%. And the NASDAQ 100, kind of a tech index, was down nearly 2%. So, still moving down. Not seeing a whole lot of, rapid movement anymore, but just more of a steady decline. Like now, the Dow, looking at it, the Dow's down 1.3%. S&P's recovered a little bit. So, give you a little bit of information on what's going on. Jane, always candle cooking and successfully percolated coffee. Posted a small clip on my Rumble channel.
I can't get on Rumble on my computer because I have it saved by assigning a password. That's I'm watching it on my iPad because I can't do both things at once anyway. I will email this to Clay. How about that?
Okay. Crank the email up here. And, we encourage everybody, if you have a channel that, people can subscribe to or whatever, share it with us or post it here in the comments. We like to, encourage members of the family to support the family. So that is something we encourage you to do. Still waiting on E-Train's email.
I just sent it. I had to copy from text and send and do the thing. So it might take a second, and I have to get there. It's on your work.
Okay.
Sure. Which one you got open?
Yeah, I'm looking at work.
Cool.
Now, like I said, the interesting thing going on in the market is treasuries. Fascinating, really, if you follow the market. The 10-year treasury, which is kind of the mainstay of the mortgage housing rate market. Well, the 10-year has moved from 3.98 to 4.29, a 30 basis point jump in literally a day, which is huge. Simply means somebody is dumping treasuries. Now, somebody was saying it's probably all the central banks dumping treasuries, buying gold, because they have been active buying gold for a while. And
what
I looked at the
about
price of
China?
gold. Price of gold hadn't moved. So I don't really think it's central banks buying gold. That leaves, as E-Train said, China. So I think China is dumping treasury bonds in some ways to try to spite Trump, get the rates up because they know he wants the rates down. But I don't think that's the wisest move for them. And you will talk about that in a few minutes as far as China and what's going on specifically with the tariffs. I thought about going into this, last Saturday, but it's a little bit in the weeds, but I think I can give it in a decent enough big picture where it will make sense. And we'll look at some of all the background going on with the tariffs and particularly in China and what's the significance of all that. And it's pretty damn significant, actually. I think you'll be interested.
Sorry.
So before we get to that, I did want to answer a question or two. Open sesame. The question was asked last Saturday night, I think, by Jeffrey Baker.
It's last Tuesday.
Was it last Tuesday, or I thought it was Saturday night? And I mentioned that I would talk about it.
No,
It was
no,
on the show.
it was last Tuesday. I promise.
Okay. Did
It
you
was a
pull this
comment on
off?
one of the shows. It was last
Yeah.
Tuesday.
I did answer this already, I think. But somebody asked a question Saturday night. And I'm trying to remember what that was. Anyway, just to go ahead and make sure we answer this one. The question was, what are the tariffs proposed and in effect? Well, as of today, all the tariffs are in effect. So there's really no proposals outstanding. So I just took the top 20 or 30 countries and tried to highlight them. Just looking at some of the highlights for China, the tariff now in effect as of this afternoon was 104%.
I'm back.
Welcome back. Glad to have you.
Thanks.
Hope you're able to stay with us.
Me too. We'll see. You never know around here.
The represents an 84% change. So that's pretty steep. Canada, tariff now in effect is 25%, and this is on non-USMCA goods. This USMCA is the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Treaty Agreement, where they pretty much on a lot of goods did away with tariffs. So on non-commodities in that agreement, 25%, with a 10% tariff on energy and potash, which is used in fertilizers, and 0% on anything that complies with the USMCA treaty. It's an increase of 22.5% for non-USMCA goods. Mexico, tariff increased from 2.5% to 25%, just like with Canada. USMCA goods are not included. There's also a prior 25% fentanyl tariff. Trump is pretty damn serious about trying to stop the flow of fentanyl into the country and pressuring Canada and Mexico to try to do a better job intercepting it, interdicting it, and stopping the flow across the border. Germany, there's a 20% EU rate in effect, which is an increase from 2.5%. The 2.5% is a relatively common tariff that we had on, most products. And it's part of the EU reciprocal tariffs. Japan, 24%. But interestingly, come to agreement with Japan on them removing their tariffs. And the Japanese market was up 6%, or is up 6% so far this evening. Privileges of being first. South Korea, 23%, up from 2.5%. The United Kingdom, 10%, up from 2.5%. Remember, United Kingdom is no longer part of the ECU. Only a baseline tariff applies. There is no reciprocal trade tariff on the UK. India, 26%, up from 2.5%. Hits primarily electronics, textiles, and jewelry. Taiwan, 32%, which is up from 2.5%. Hits everything but semiconductors. Semiconductors are exempt, which is Taiwan's major export to the U.S. Vietnam, 46%. Again, Vietnam is one of those that has pretty much agreed to terms. And so this will be going away. In fact, a lot of these will be going away. The EU even proposed a deal to eliminate tariffs on autos and something else. I forget what it was. But Trump refused because he wants a broader, better deal. So, but things are in negotiations with the euro. They're trying to come to a deal. Italy, Ireland, Netherlands are all in the EU, so 20% rate up from the 2.5. Singapore, tariff now in effect is 10%. That's up from 2.5%. Singapore has had very low trade barriers with us, so they have among the lowest tariff rates. Same with Switzerland. Pharmaceuticals may be exempt. So that's one thing, for a lot of these tariffs, the main products oftentimes we import from countries are semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, whatever, and those are generally exempt from the tariffs. Belgium, EU, so 20%. Malaysia, tariff in effect is 28%. Now, some people go, how much trade do we do with Malaysia? Not a lot. How about Vietnam and Indonesia and some of these small countries? Don't do a whole lot of trade, but they're starting to be fronts for China. And so if they're going to backdoor handle China's goods, well, that's one thing we're negotiating. It's obviously not something we want. And we'll talk more about China here shortly. Thailand, 27, Brazil, 10, Hong Kong. Since Hong Kong is now a part of China, they got hit with the 104%. The UAE, 10%. There are exemptions on energy, oil, which is the main export from the UAE. Australia, 10%. There's no reciprocal rate there. Russia, the tariff's 10%, but we don't trade anything with Russia because there are sanctions in place. That's why Russia didn't get any reciprocal tariffs. We raised our baseline to 10%, but on everybody, but we don't do trade. We don't have any trade ongoing with Russia.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Sure.
If we have sanctions on a company, does that automatically mean we don't trade with them?
Depends on what the sanctions are. It can be on specific goods or commodities.
But is that all the sanction is that we're not going to buy your stuff? Or
Yes.
this part of your stuff?
Or
Okay.
allow them access to certain U.S. services like the SWIFT network. Remember, I talked about how Biden monetized the dollar against them?
Uh-huh.
That was part of the sanctions.
But aren't there some sanctions where we can just completely shut a country down?
We can't completely shut them down like, Russia.
Financially.
We can cut them off from access to our systems, but, they started, buying and selling oil in Bitcoin and yuan.
Right.
And euro.
Right.
They were not cut off from those.
Gotcha. Jade.
Let's hope Walmart goes back to Sam Walton's principles of made in the USA quality products. I don't know how, other viewers feel. I'd love to hear back from you on this or, kind of take a poll. But I've heard a lot of people complain for years about, the cheap and poorly made products. That stuff just doesn't hold up or last, particularly some of the more inexpensive stuff. You look at Amazon and some of, a lot of the stuff that's really cheap, you read the comments and a lot of people say worthless, doesn't work, don't buy, broken, all the parts didn't arrive, whatever. So is it worth it to you to pay 5 or 10% more for something made in America that will be pretty decent?
Yes.
I wonder how most people feel. I would say yes. And it's not just because, it's made in America, uh, but for me, if I buy something, I want it to work and I want it
Mm,
to last. There are a few things I only want, you know, to use one time. And I don't care if it breaks after that or not. I buy like a little siphon. I remember I bought a siphon from, was it Harbor Freight? Little siphon pump. Used it the first time and it gave out on me that first use. And I was so irritated. I was so mad because I needed it. I trusted it because I had it available for such pseudo emergencies. And then when I needed it, didn't work. It didn't matter what I paid for it. I overpaid. I grotesquely overpaid. And it would have been worth an additional 10% in the price to have something that would have held up. So
Jane.
I agree. I would rather pay a little something extra and get a quality product. If I'm buying tools or whatever, I will only buy good stuff. And I'll, waited till I could afford it.
True.
I just think you're better off in the long run. So, a few more tariffs. Philippines 25%, Israel 17%. Israel has agreed to eliminate all their tariffs, so this is going away. Philippines, Indonesia are close. Saudi Arabia, the baseline, but it's mostly energy and oil is largely exempt. Turkey, 22%. So these are the top 30 countries. Our Secretary Treasurer, which we're going to talk about in some detail in a few minutes, said yesterday that over 70 countries had already approached to make a deal on tariffs.
Isn't that good news, though? I mean, wouldn't
Yeah,
um, the
it's
Wall Street,
basically set.
the Wall Street be happy about that, or is it just all about China?
They should be, but once fear sets in, people don't necessarily think rationally. And 70 countries wanting to negotiate doesn't mean to the street that we have 70 done deals and the tariffs are going away.
Right.
Um, but to me, if a country's, within a day or two of announcing the tariffs has already said, hey, we want to negotiate, we want to get rid of, our tariffs or, come to an agreement, which let's face it, Trump's demanding something in return for removing the tariffs. He's either demanding all tariffs be removed or some other sweetener if they really like Europe doesn't want to import our food, our
Well, they
meat.
have good reason. I mean,
I was
they
going to
they
say
kind of have good reason.
I don't necessarily disagree with their reason,
Uh-uh.
but Trump's saying, okay, if you're not going to import our meat, what else are you going to do? Give us something
But
else.
they're not going to import our bread or any of the other food products that we make that have all the chemicals in them. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
but like um, automobiles, they charge tariffs, high tariffs, and some of their regulations are steeper than the U.S. Maybe they'll grant exemptions for small trucks, you know, work vehicles, something to try to even out the trade imbalance. And if we get our food improved, it'll be more suitable for export, which
Jane
be better
Post.
for us,
I'm
be better
okay.
for them.
Yeah, Jane Post. I'm okay with um, them not importing our food. Melissa, exactly. Jane, maybe Europe can work with RFK Jr. to get us better quality food. I mean, it wouldn't take that much. I mean, just look at the list of the ingredients uh, that they don't allow that we do. It's like a ridiculous, like 6,000 ingredients or something crazy, but they
Yeah,
are
and
healthier.
Kellogg manufactures the same cereal in Europe that it does here, but with a different set of ingredients. It's not like it's a big secret or be difficult for them to do. They make
Nope.
a few tweaks at their factory. It takes a day or two, and boom, they're good.
I've had I've had Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies, Fruit Loops in Europe. They don't taste any different.
No.
They look different, but that's
And
it.
some people actually like the taste of some foreign foods better. Like a lot of people like the taste of Mexican Coke better than US Coke because Mexico uses
Pure cane
cane
sugar.
sugar.
Yeah.
We use corn syrup.
Uh-huh.
Here in the States, Coke uses corn syrup. So,
Like why? Like why? I don't know. I know it's cheaper. We'll still consume it, but still, really,
yeah. Melissa,
Melissa,
every
every
company
company.
is like that. Yeah, there's just a lot we can do. And I would
Yeah.
like to be able to export food just because I know it would be safer.
Yeah. Hmm. They lost their contract with Domino's Sugar in the U.S. Is that what happened?
Yeah, they didn't want to pay the higher price for sugar. Hence corn syrup is cheaper. There is
There
no excuse
isn't.
for America's poor quality food. Absolutely not. None. Zip, zero, nada.
I was
All
listening
the
to Piers Morgan the other day. I can't remember who he was talking to, but it was the person he was talking to is somebody else I'm listening to. And they were talking about food. And he was like, because he has a house in LA and he has a house, of course, he lives mostly in Europe. And he was like, I go to the store in Great Britain and I buy a loaf of bread, and within a week, it's growing mold. He's like, I can buy a loaf of bread in the US, leave it on the counter for 6 weeks. I get back there and it looks just like it did when I left.
yeah. And
He said, if you can't get bread right, like, come on, it's not that hard.
I I used to like bagels with a little cream cheese, these everything
Mhm.
bagels. You can buy these little real thin bagels.
Like
And so it
Thomas's,
made
yeah,
a
we used to buy those.
do what?
The Thomas's bagels, the really thin ones, we used to buy those.
Yep.
Yep.
And they made a good little snack, good little breakfast. And then I started becoming concerned about, my food and looking into it. And I realized I had a package that I bought that already open, kept it in a little bowl where I keep the bread on the counter. But I didn't eat any. And like 3 months later, I looked at the
True.
bag and
It is true.
it still looked okay. And I'm like, my dad grew
There's
up in the Great Depression and food was precious to him. You did not throw away food. But I was just like, I am not going to eat that.
there is
So I threw
something
it away.
wrong with
Yeah.
that. I mean, that is not okay
Yeah.
ever.
And Melissa's got a point. The sicker they make us, the more big pharma can make. The sometimes you do kind of wonder if the health industry is oriented towards making people healthy or just healing them. And there is a difference in the approach.
I don't think you can be healthy and I mean, you can be healthy and be healed, but I think they just want to mask the
Well,
symptoms of whatever's wrong with
healing
you.
healing is the process of treating non-normal symptoms, non-normal conditions. Healthy
Mhm.
is just being normal. You don't need treatment. So that
Right.
was my point. Healthy, you
Okay.
don't need treatment. Healing, you need constant treatment. Always something going on.
But they never heal them. They just cover
Oh,
up
that's
symptoms.
yeah. Pfizer has never cured one illness
No,
and has
they cover up
and
a
has
symptom.
created tons of complications. They have lost
They
billions and billions of dollars in lawsuits due to their vaxes having additional complications,
well they
and
they
probably some
create
more queuing up.
yeah, they create a medication to mask a symptom of a bigger problem that they're not going to treat, but just to cover up that symptom, and then that medication causes other symptoms that you have to take more medications for, and eventually, I mean, you're just full of chemicals. And
Yep.
the thing that's actually wrong never got treated.
So I think it's a great thing that a lot of people are starting to wake up to what all one is being put in their bodies, the potential harm not eating healthy can do to you, and three, the perverse incentives in and with big pharma.
Let me ask a question real quickly. So, when I was a hairstylist, I had a lot of hospitalists, which are doctors that work for the hospital, um, as my clients. And I was getting real into this healthy food kick. And I asked one of them, I said, "Hey, so you know that like magnesium, most everybody's deficient. You have to have magnesium for over 300 of the body's processes. If you're low in magnesium, there's all this other stuff going on. And this is just like one thing." I was like, would it be easier to just get people magnesium than to put them on all these medications? And then more medications to cover up the symptoms of, or the, excuse me, the deficit of medication you gave them, and yada, yada, yada. And he said, yeah, but people aren't going to do it. They're not going to take the extra. So I was like, but they're going to take the medication you give them? He was like, yeah, it's a quicker fix. I just don't know that I believe that in my core. I think that people are just don't know. They just didn't know because I mean, doctors aren't normally taught nutrition, correct?
They are not.
And they aren't teaching their patients nutrition, correct?
They don't think about nutrition. They have to
They
go out of
just
their way to learn about it.
and they just think about this medication will do. But this guy like knew it. He was just like, yeah, but people aren't going to do it. I'm like, I think you're underestimating your patients. Like, if they knew that they'd have to take this medication, they could just do this instead. Just take this supplement or eat this and not this. I mean, I would make that change. I don't know, especially if I was, majorly ill.
If the doctor communicated it to the patient that it was a matter of their health and life, just like they do when they give them a medicine, people would value it as much as they would the medicine, I
Do
think.
you do you think that they would also, if they said, okay, here you could up your magnesium and eat, this food instead of that, and or you could do this medication and possible side effects, which means I'll have to put you on this medication and this, and it'll, take 20 years. Do you think like? But I know they don't do that second part, right?
Well, let's be careful because taking some supplements and herbs can have complications as well.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying under the
So
advice of a doctor, if you did this, they're supposed to
yeah,
know those things.
I think whatever the doctor recommends, he ought to tell you I don't think they do a good enough job of ensuring informed consent.
I don't think so
Whatever
either.
meds or vitamins or supplements they recommend, they ought to detail you not only the potential benefits but the potential complications. Um,
As well as with
there are certain
medications.
vitamins if you take in excess, they can have relatively serious complications. There are forms of magnesium that you can take that aren't as absorbable, that
Well,
don't do
yeah.
you any good. So people waste a lot of money on forms that don't help, and then they don't notice any difference, and they think, well, this is just worthless, so they quit.
Yeah, that is true.
And I've got an even better, example. I worked my way through school in surgery, so I'd work summers, Christmas break, or whatever in surgery as a surgical assistant, not a licensed SA, but I'd be an OR tech. I'd be the one passing the instruments or helping hold the guts or helping to close, that kind of stuff. And I had a friend who was diagnosed with gallstones, and the doc recommended surgery. She was in some pain, but she was very, very leery, scared of surgery, and was
Mm.
kind of getting into herbs. So she started taking this one herb. I forget what it is. Within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, her pain had subsided. And she went back to the doctor 3 months later for a follow-up. Her stones were gone. And the doc was just kind of amazed. Well, I was working in surgery, and I was doing a lot of gallbladder removals. And after surgery one day, I was walking with the surgeon and talking, and I started to tell him about this herb. And he kind of interrupted me, and he said, I don't want to know. 1/3 of my business is gallbladders. He said, I don't want to know.
That's awful.
That's a true story. And I think, doctors are people. We place them on a high pedestal, but let's face it, they are people, and they got to make that bread too. They got a lot of bills to pay.
Yeah, but at what cost to others? I mean, they
I
they
I'm just
take the do
saying,
no harm.
docs are people. It's like COVID. They were getting an extra $10,000. Hospitals were getting extra $10,000 for every COVID death. So they
Yeah.
would take a gunshot wound and label it as a COVID death, a car wreck, label it as a COVID death.
Well, they would do the PCR test, and if it was even slightly positive,
which the
but that
PCR
wasn't
test will
even.
almost always
Yeah,
be slightly positive, even if you
right.
aren't specifically infected with a live virus.
Yeah.
It's so sensitive, it'll detect rudimentary fragments you could have inhaled from somebody else and not have a live infection ongoing, but it detects part of that DNA, comes back positive. The
Melissa. Okay.
inventor of the test, said it was not suitable for testing for viral infections because it was too sensitive.
Okay. Melissa, that's terrible talking about your doctor.
It was. And I was a little surprised, but the practical reality is, these people are human, and a lot of them care more about money than per se principles, their oath. I mean, look at the practice of medicine today. How many, honestly, doctors do you think are really concerned about doing no harm? Or do they just write a script just to get the patient out of their office and move on to the next one? Look at all the complications
Sadly.
with Ozempic.
Oh God. And they still advertise it on television. It makes me crazy.
What was the painkiller? The little pill that got so many people addicted so quickly.
Oh, um, somebody. It's there's a uh, oxy,
Oxycodone.
oxycodone.
The pharma knew that it was that addictive. Doctors
Pfizer
found
did.
out in short order from their own experience that it was that addictive, and they kept writing it
Writing scripts.
and fulfilling it more and more, knowing the patient was addicted. So, and how many doctors lost their license? So anyway, you just got to realize that doctors are people too, and they are fraught with the same weaknesses, the same greed, the same possibly indifference that you encounter in anybody on the street. It is sad, but it's true. People haven't been going to med school for a higher purpose. They've been going for the money. And heaven knows they've got huge bills. Their insurance has skyrocketed. They have to have a huge staff to meet the requirements for billing and administration purposes. So there's some issues. Jane, more than likely it was milk thistle with something like dandelion root. So Clay, please don't kill the dandelions this year. That's right, Jane. No comment. There will come a time when I have a field and a pasture. I will not kill the dandelions. But when I have a front yard with roses and flowers and a HOA that's kind of persnickety, I need to, let's say, keep it de-weeded. I know you're being serious. I am being serious, and that dandelion is used for detoxification. And E-Train actually got me some dandelion tea. I haven't made any recently, but it's not bad. Tastes a little bit like burnt coffee, which is not bad to me. So, but yeah, I do have to maintain some appearances of neatness in the public grounds. I make it up as coffee. Yeah, the what I have doesn't really steep. It's a powder that dissolves. Little kind of rough powder that dissolves. All right, looks like E-Train got bounced again. She is still having problems with her internet. Bless her heart. She's just having a hard time. We do hope to get that fixed before soon. All right. Jane, that's great, but you can make it up as instant coffee. Okay, what's the difference in making it as tea or just as a drink? I get hot water, stir it in there, or as instant coffee. I'm not sure what the distinction there is. All right, let me switch to the kind of the second idea for tonight. Still going to be on tariffs, and don't hesitate to stop me if I say something that doesn't make sense. But there's been a lot of talk about Trump and Bassin being crazy, not having a plan, being haphazard, being chaotic. And I honestly think Trump sometimes likes to portray a little craziness because it strengthens his negotiating position. And what I've come to know of Trump, and I've met him a couple times, is this dude loves to negotiate. He lives for the deal. I mean, wrote his book, Art of the Deal. And I mean, that's almost his life's motto. We know he loves to deal. And we know that he will strike extreme positions initially. but he's never been haphazard. Not that I've ever seen or been able to find. Now, my real focus, though, also is more on his Treasury Secretary, Bassett. Most people don't know this, but this dude was a portfolio manager at Soros's Quantum Fund in 1992. That may not ring a bell for you, but in 1992, Soros, Peter Druckenmiller, Bassett became billionaires because of this deal at Quantum. So it was the guy that did studies that exposed the Bank of England as being at high risk due to interest rate moves. His paper, his work, persuaded Stanley Druckenmiller to put a big short position on the pound, which this position became the stuff of legends. Bassett was also pushing or calling for them to push even harder at the climax of the trade as the pound was crashing and they were making billions. I mean, Quantum and others were shorting the pound as fast as they could, and the BOE, the Bank of England, was racing through its reserves trying to prop up the pound. Just ran out of reserves. The price crashed. The bid was doomed from the beginning, actually. Really never had a chance. And the pound collapsed. So Soros, Druckenmiller, Bassett made billions. Massive, massive, legendary trade, and a massively embarrassing moment for the Bank of England. Glorious for Soros, Druckenmiller, and Bassett, and it was a key driver in fueling the hedge fund growth in the mid-late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know if y'all remember, but in finance there for a while, everybody wanted to be a hedge fund manager. Why? Because you could become a billionaire overnight in being a hedge fund manager. So, 1992, shorting the British pounds. Deal? Actually, no. Bassett also repeated that success in 2010 against the yen. What I'm trying to do here is very briefly paint you a picture that there is no one in the world who understands currency trading or currency manipulation more than Bassett. I am coming to believe, I'm thinking that's probably why he got the job. He proposed something to Trump, and it impressed Trump enough that he gave him the job. Now, think about the conditions of the American U.S. economy when Trump took office. And you're the new Treasury. I mean, you're the Treasury Secretary, even as you're being talked about for the position in, up to the election. All the warning signs that Bassett saw in the British pound were occurring in the U.S. Inflated housing markets, Treasury yields, all pointed to the same conditions that led them to do the big short of the pound. Bassett has I'll describe it as an obsession with housing prices and its relationship to interest rates. And it's not just because he's a populist and he, wants everybody doing well. He's actually detailing, mapping out vulnerabilities to protect it against future exploitation. I repeat, he's looking at the current system, the current state of the American economy, and he sees growing risk for it to be exploited the same way he exploited the British pound, the same way he and Soros and Druckenmiller exploited the yen, the British pound. he's looking at it and trying to figure out a way to protect against future exploitation. Now, this sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory when I'm, and I don't argue with that, but look at the market. Has housing been in a bubble? Has stocks been in a bubble? Have interest rates been way too low than way too high? One of the most glaring vulnerabilities has been the overinflated trading market. Wall Street has been on a cocaine fueled sugar high. Hedge funds were leveraged to the gills. Some of these hedge funds are 50-to-1 leverage. For every dollar you invest, they borrow 50. So if that trade they establish starts to go bad, it goes really bad really quick. Huge risk. And if that bubble that was fueling all of this excess popped, it would have created a 2008 style financial crisis. Most people don't appreciate that. They don't understand that. Now, the tariff rollout, in terms of talking about it, the precursor, doing it in phases, was kind of a way of controlling the demolition, the detonation. Now, Wall Street has freaked out and deleveraged themselves. That's a lot of what you've seen in these down 4%, down 5% days. Those aren't normal trading days where the market's going down. That's people dumping stuff, deleveraging, trying to pay off their loans. Now, there won't be any banks or hedge funds who can't afford to pay off their loans because they were over-levered. I strongly suspect the amount of leverage has decreased dramatically the past 2 months on Wall Street. And I think that's why he was hired, to reduce the bubble in asset prices in the U.S. and to do to the Bank of China, what he did to the pound and the yen. All right. Keep in mind, a lot of parts moving, but the extreme tariffs are being imposed, particularly on China, at a time when there is a recession or even depression happening in China. Becerra, even in his interview with Tucker Carlson, emphasized that point several times, how China's economy was in the tank. Was he throwing out hints of what he was planning to do? Maybe. It certainly was on his mind. By, limiting China, shutting down their exports, he's creating the same conditions that led to his big short of the British pound. If the Chinese currency, the yuan, collapses, then that will cause a global flight into U.S. Treasury bonds. Because think about it, if China's currency is collapsing, if their economy is collapsing, and you're pulling your money out because it's too risky to leave it in there, where do you put it? Do you want to move it to Russia? Do you want to move it to Southeast Asia? Do you want, Hong Kong and Singapore are out now because they're China. Do you want to move it to Africa? How about the Middle East? How about Europe? No. How about No. There's really not a whole lot of other places to move it to in bulk. So it will generate global flight into two things. The first one is U.S. Treasuries, U.S. Treasury bonds, which are the historic safe haven for panic money. Now, the more money that goes into bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds, the lower the interest rates, the teeter-totter. We've talked about the teeter-totter before. So more demand for bonds cause their price to go up. Supply and demand is still a law. On a bond, as the price goes up, the interest rate goes down, the teeter-totter. Those two are inverse. So the more people buying bonds, the lower the interest rates go. So this global flight into U.S. Treasury bonds. Remember, this year, thanks to Yellen and Biden, U.S. Treasury is going to have to issue about $14 trillion in debt. Normal is $3 trillion, $3 or $4 trillion. There is $6 or $7 trillion coming due in June alone. So driving down the interest rates even further for when they do have to start refinancing this trillions of debt can be huge. In a way, there's a beauty to it if you think about it. It's ultimately forcing China's hand to spend its money buying U.S. debt and making and lowering the interest cost to the U.S. taxpayer. That's kind of beautiful if you think about it. That's kind of brilliant if you think about it. So the fight is on, and it is mainly between the U.S. and China. Europe has already offered to settle, like I say. Trump, refused their initial offer. He wants better terms, but the negotiations are on. China, on the other hand, is saying, quote, "we'll fight to the death." And I think it's because they realize the game and what's going on. The Chinese are not stupid. They have some pretty smart deals. They suckered us at first when they started using, currency to manipulate trade and some of the deals they negotiated. They're not stupid. So if the game is on, then it kind of begs the question, what are the options for China? What's going to happen in the future? What are the options? Well, the first option is they can surrender to Trump. They can just concede to whatever Trump wants, give him whatever he wants. This is a defeat. No mistake about it. And it will cause loss of face. And I use the term loss of face because that is significant in the Oriental paradigm. They have a certain honor in respect that is demanded by figures in authority. It's non-negotiable. And so for them to admit defeat, suffer this loss of face is just a huge, huge, enormous disgrace. Remember Japan's difficulty in surrendering in World War II? Even when they knew it was lost, we were taking all the islands. We were bombing Tokyo. They had the huge fire in Tokyo due to our bombing. A lot of their cities were just devastated. And then we dropped the first nuke, destroyed a whole city. Japan still wouldn't surrender. Dropped the second nuke. There still were people who did not want to surrender, but the emperor stepped in and demanded the surrender. But that was extreme, extreme humiliation in the Japanese view. That's one reason why they were so willing and eager to adopt American ways, manufacturing processes. John Deming went over there and taught them about manufacturing quality, how to improve quality. And they took it to heart. And 20 or 30 years later, they were kicking our ass in manufacturing quality because the American manufacturers gotten fat and lazy and didn't stress quality. So, our cars look damn good. Still got to love a 1971 Hemi Cuda with a 426. But they needed constant work. Japanese cars were far cheaper, much more fuel efficient, and you'd buy it, and all you had to do is change the oil. It would run and run and run and run. So they took the quality manufacturing to heart, and they did it part because of the humiliation. They were humbled. So they were more than willing to find out what made America so strong, what gave America such an advantage. And, we sent over people to help them rebuild and guide them. One of them was John Deming, and he's the guy that preached the, quality manufacturing. They took it to heart. So, bottom line, losing face won't happen, will not happen, not going to happen. Think about it. Trump, who's never been subtle, let's face it, is openly goading them, taunting them, trying to make them lose face. Why? If you're interested in negotiating somebody, why do you want to make it almost impossible for them to negotiate? That kind of means you really don't want them to negotiate. He's, making it so difficult that they won't accept the deal. They won't even try. Trump, this makes me think Trump doesn't want to negotiate with them. He wants to destroy them, just as they have wanted to destroy the U.S. So, number one, concessions? No, I don't see it. Not unless the pain becomes extreme, more so than the pain of the loss of face. And even in, 17, 18, 19, 2017, 18, 19, Trump's first term, they never agreed to reduce, a lot of the tariffs or restrictions. They simply devalued their currency and ate the cost of the tariffs. And that's option two. They could devalue the yuan by 20 to 40%. And I think this is kind of what Trump is hoping for. Why? Well, if that currency drops 20, 25%, it's going to break 8. Right now it's at 740, somewhere around 740 yuan to the dollar, which is, it's already started dropping. By dropping, I mean rising, more yuan for each dollar. So the value of it is dropping. Currency's a little weird when you talk about it sometimes. But just think, more yuan to buy the same dollar. So the yuan becomes weaker. It's dropping. So, but going from 7 yuan to 8 yuan is rising, but it's weakening. Does that make sense? Like I say, it's a little weird, but the yuan's already started to weaken. If it weakens significantly, a lot of currency traders are going to look at it and they're going to think short this mother. So this will cause huge shorting of the yuan and cause huge capital flights from China. And where's that money going to go? Into treasuries. Getting China to fund U.S. debt at lower rates. Or I mentioned there were two possibilities for it. Treasuries being one. The second one is Bitcoin. Same two places it went in 2017, 2018, 2019, when Bitcoin went from $600 to $18,000. A 30-fold increase. It can happen again. Now, China has roughly $780 billion in treasuries now, and some argue they can dump it, and that made, they argue that would do a lot of harm to the U.S. The flip side is the more they dump treasuries, the lower the price goes. Supply and demand still a law. So the more they dump, the less they get for it. And with their currency being devalued, also that contributes to their currency dropping, because as they sell their treasuries for dollars, they get more dollars, but the dollars are taken out of circulation. So liquidity drops for the dollar. That makes the price of the dollar go higher, strengthens the dollar, which weakens the yuan even more. So by selling treasuries, they're contributing to devaluing the yuan, which makes it more and more attractive to short, which also makes fewer and fewer people willing to accept it in a business transaction. Because by the time they accept it and actually use it to buy something else or exchange it, the value's dropped. So that forces the currency down even lower, and it gets this repeating cycle going. Bottom line, shucking it down to the cob, it's how you destroy an economy. A collapsing currency with a collapsing economy. It's not a hand I want to hold in a poker match. Third option for them would be to engage in a huge fiscal stimulus. You know, $2, $3, $4 trillion at least, which will probably only be the start of what they need to do. And it will push China's debt absolutely off the chart. Now, you know, some people may say, you know, China's government doesn't have a lot of debt. What are you talking about? The problem is, the issue is in China, you have to understand China. In China, the debt is mostly owned by local and cities and provinces. It's borrowed at that level, not the central government level. So if the central government piled onto that, you still have tons of debt, massive tons of debt. Interest still needs to be paid. And in some cities, some provinces, they're already being crushed. They have employees not getting paid, people missing payroll, government entities missing payroll. So they're already on the verge of a fairly chaotic situation. So if the central authority borrows tons for spending, it will just create huge inflation in addition. And you'll have far higher interest payments than what China is receiving in hard currency, because nobody's going to want the yuan. They won't be selling stuff. So that won't help attract investments to capital into China. It will actually do the opposite. It will cause capital to flee China into where? The US. So they have no funds, they have no tax revenues to pay the interest, which means they'll have to print more and more money just to pay their interest, to pay their bills. In other words, that's how you destroy an economy. So, option one, very painful, embarrassing, it's like death. Option two, remember, option one is negotiate. Option two, devalue. It's how you destroy an economy. Option three, unleash fiscal stimulus. That's how you destroy an economy. Are you getting the idea? Almost every outcome turns out bad for China. Now, let's be honest, the US will have some pain too. But one good thing we've done is we've avoided getting ourselves in the situation China is in now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. And if China collapses, it will create a huge manufacturing vacuum that the US will be uniquely positioned to take advantage of. Now, some people talk about, you know, plants will be automated or we're losing a lot of workers with the deportations. Both of those are true. And there will be some robotics in some automation in the new plants, some robotics, but there's still going to be an awful lot of good jobs created. Some plants, like in steel, you really can't automate as much. But there's still going to be a whole lot more jobs available. Now, China, a big part of its problem is its demographic situation, which we've talked about it several times before. It has it recognizes that, and it's trying to automate its factories. But the lack of capital, the lack of access to US high tech, which is necessary for some of the automation, it'll put a damper on their plans. It's a big question as to whether they can respond fast enough to this changing world, the changing environment. And let's face it, adaptation has never been a strength of centrally planned economies. It's why socialism and communism always fail. The bureaucrats just can't respond fast enough. And if they respond, they generally have a poor response. Did I also mention that Xi has been restoring some of the better traits of Mao and the hardline communist? That's making him a lot of friends. And I've not even touched on the purge of military leadership in China from quote unquote loyal generals. Several top generals have been replaced or never heard from again. They just disappear. And it appears that there's some sort of internal war for control going on. This obviously adds to the difficulty in resolving other problems. So there's a lot going on, and none of it is good for China, from what I can tell. Now, the US doesn't have a sure bet here. Don't let me, paint that picture. But I admit, I trust Bissett handling this because there's no one better. That's not a guarantee. There's always risk. But I'm not sure there were really other options. Sooner is better than later in terms of patching our issues. And you've got the guy who wrote the book on currency in control. With the loudest mouthpiece in the world to goad the other side into ensuring that their ego is controlling their moves, not their brain. The best thing for China would be to negotiate, by far. But not when their ego gets involved. Just imagine, what if out of all possible worlds, Trump had hired someone with experience in crushing a sovereign economy? Looking at the bigger picture, Trump's hand strengthens and economic risk to the US lessens or diminishes with every trade deal he inks. This leaves China more and more isolated because the more and more nations that resolve issues with the US, like I said, so far, as of a day or two ago, Bissett said there were 70 nations wanting to make a deal. It won't take many deals to reach a tipping point. Some people talking about, the world will realign and China will come out of this, with all sorts of advantages. That's not panning out. And every time Trump inks another deal, China is more and more isolated and has less options, less opportunity. So he accomplishes two things, kills two birds with one stone. He improves American manufacturing and exports, jobs, economy, brings in trillions. He's got $5 trillion in new commitment for new investments. He lowers interest rates, and he crushes an enemy of the U.S., both militarily and economically, in one fell swoop. Now, this is not something that's too good to be true. It started, process has begun, and obviously there will be challenges. No plan of this magnitude ever operates at perfect efficiency. And we've seen some of the losses and the pain in the U.S. stock market, with more to come. Not going to lie, I think there's more to come. But remember, the U.S. market was vastly overpriced to begin with. It was a huge risk. We were in a bubble, and it was going to collapse sooner or later. Sooner is always preferable to later. The damage usually is far less. And if this plan works over the next year or two, the U.S. markets, stock markets, will explode. They'll just take off. Cash will be flowing, production will be growing, wages will be increasing for the poor and the middle class. Greatly increasing demand for goods in the country drives the economy. Securities, real estate will recover, and it'll be at lower leverage, lower debt levels, thus reducing the risk. Now, I'm not trying to preach nirvana or, this is perfectly what is happening. From what I can see, what I can tell, what I know, particularly of Bassett, his history, the history of tariffs, history of currencies, it fits. It fits. There's a lot of pain, a lot of work ahead. A little luck would really be great. But the potential trade-offs for the country as a whole, I think, are worth it. Not every individual is going to come out smelling like a rose, but for the country, I think it's worth it. So, take a few questions. We've got a few comments. Jane on the coffee. You can just add your cream and sugar. I like mine like burnt coffee. May mix it with the regular coffee. See how that turns out for the fun of it. Melissa, please add to the movie night film list Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I will write that down. That sounds awful familiar. I'm trying to think if I've seen it. Sunshine. I like the name. The name just rolls. Of the Spotless Mind. And then Jane, what about Accountant? Look at y'all. When they go make a movie about a finance guy? Oh, wait, they've done that a few times. How many movies have they made about accountants? Anyway, how about marketing? Management? Anyway. Jane, 4.5 years till I plan to retire. From your lips to God's ears. I hope. The more I've seen over the past few days, 3 or 4, 5 days, I've been thinking maybe this really is. I've had the idea going around my head, tried fleshing it out a little bit, trying to think of different issues, consequences. I tried to give you a relatively clear Cliff Notes version tonight. I hope it made sense in general. And obviously, if you've got questions or want further discussion on, some of the specifics, be glad to try to do that. But I hope that made sense and was, somewhat interesting. It's a different view than what you're hearing and seeing in the media and on the street. So for what it's worth. Otherwise, I'm dragging my tiny house into the woods and peace out. I'm probably going to do that anyway. My real desire right now is just for a simpler life. I greatly value peace, and I want a little place where I can sit, enjoy a cigar and my scotch, watching the sunset in the west. So maybe over a valley with a nice bold creek nearby, listening to the creek. Anyway, we'll see. But yeah, I've gotten to where I want a simpler life, kind of raise my own food deal and just enjoy my days, do a little traveling. So I agree with you, Clay. I'd be happy to have you as my neighbor, and I'd be damn proud to have you as mine. So uh, maybe that'll happen someday. I think we're both looking at the same region actually, so we'll see. I'm actually going to spend some time this summer checking out some different sites, areas. So wish me luck. That brings us to the closing hour. If you have some questions, let me know. Email me Moffat on Money or DM me on X at Moffat on Money. Would love to hear from you. We do try to answer questions. We value your feedback and comments greatly. We value your friendship and support, members of the family. Love having you, even those on the replay crew. Some people can't, make it at night. They catch us, the following days. Love you guys too. If you will, please hit that like button or, follow if you haven't already. And I appreciate y'all being with us. I enjoyed it. I hope you found the time, somewhat profitable or interesting. And look forward to seeing y'all Saturday night, same time, same station. Hope y'all have a great rest of the week ahead. And blessings to you all. Our time is up. We thank you for yours. Good night, y'all.